All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Geopolitics and Money, formerly known as
Yes.
Geopolitics in Conflict.
We got a new
Is that-
banner. We got a new banner. So it's
So the
it's-
name is
yep,
officially now?
It's gonna start changing. Well, so I have to put it through YouTube, and it'll take a couple of weeks. But
Couple weeks.
wow,
Why
We'll
don't
see,
we
we'll
do
see,
that?
we'll
Why don't
see.
we do things like, immediately? I'm not saying within the hour, but
yeah,
that's like fixing a road. Why it takes
I know.
years for
I know.
them?
Well, it takes years because things are improperly incentivized.
What can YouTube do? Just move for a few days.
We'll see. We'll see how long it takes them.
Excited to be with you here, guys. We have an interesting topic we want to talk to you about
Wild
because
times.
we want you to be aware of what's going on. You all know by now how things are with the media and all that stuff,
Mhm.
but this is more attached to your personal finance.
Isn't it always?
Yeah, because you think about, especially for us here in America,
Yeah.
how massive the frauds that exists
Mhm.
and the corruption is foregone conclusion. I
Yeah,
don't need
yeah,
to.
yeah.
But the idea of how much, also how illiterate people are regarding finance, basics.
Absolutely.
Did you know I'm just finding out now a few things, learning about
Really?
finance?
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was
okay.
just shocked
Yeah.
to understand how the world of credit card
Oh
operate.
God, the world
Yeah,
of credit
I'm
cards
learning
are
about all this.
ridiculous. Oh
But the
my
basics,
gosh.
just for this is what we're going to be talking to you about. In addition to that, we're going to be talking about how the Chinese economy is going to beat the estimates of Wall Street.
Well, okay, so let's
That's
dive
a
into
separate
this.
one.
Yes, that's separate. But let's dive into this really quick because
Yeah.
this is freaking wild. So Europe right now is looking at, and I'll play this lovely, I'll play this lovely clip. So we have Ursula von der Leyen, and then we have Christine Lagarde, and they are basically talking about taking savings from the average EU citizen because the EU actually is phenomenal at saving. If you guys live in the EU. Good job. You've done an amazing job saving, quite frankly, a lot better than the United States has done. But what they're trying to tap into is actually utilizing the unused savings of the average EU citizen and investing it back into some things that you may or may not find questionable. And we'll dive into what those things are. One of them is rearm Europe, and the other is venture capitalist type investment. I'll dive into how risky venture capitalist is in a bit, not venture capitalism, but investing in startups. Because startups have a very, very high failure rate. So let's dive into that. Along with that is the giant push for the central bank digital currency, CBDC, in the EU. So there's a giant push, and we may see it, we may not. I don't know. It depends how big of a fit people throw over a central bank digital currency coming in October of this year, 2025, for Europe. Now, I know that what they say is, it's just a test. You're still going to be able to use it with cash. I have all these like propaganda videos. These like, this is how you use a central. It's just like cash. It is not just like cash. A central bank digital currency does not equal cash. It is a programmable credit. That is what it is.
Which means what? They can control.
Exactly.
Be aware.
Fundamentally.
Be aware.
So what we're looking at is a potential wiping out of some very large portion of EU savings.
Wow.
So let's, if you would like.
And we do have, by the way,
we do
have
video.
Guys, type in where you are joining us from. We do have, a lot of European viewers.
Yes, I do know that.
I can think of Francis Tango, Boone, Hanging G, all of
Boone in a while.
Yeah, he's busy.
You mean like having a life and stuff?
Well, yeah.
But yes.
But we do have European viewers, and this will be more crucial too. But that does not mean for you if you are here in the United States, because we are next.
Absolutely.
Yeah, don't rule that out.
Because first we looked at China CBDC, okay? Yeah. And I know that China is
Chinese didn't go with it.
Okay, China did and didn't.
Yeah, did end it because that was the argument. They're saying what the Chinese, and I argued against that back then. And of course I got pushed back thinking that, because I said China's not going to go in. It's not going to embrace the CBDC, a full term per se, and they end up not doing it.
Well, so but it's not dead.
It's not
so
dead,
I'd like
but
to be clear, like it's not dead.
But it's not applicable on everybody either.
Yes.
When I was there, I used cash on
Yeah.
certain instances.
Well, so here's the tricky thing about a central bank digital currency, and I did an entire episode on central bank digital currency for the EU, and I shot it today, so it's going to the editor, so it'll probably be released next week. Because a central bank digital currency is like a really tricky business because in fact, okay, so since we dove into central bank digital currency right now, the vast majority of Europeans don't actually know how a central bank digital currency would affect them, because it isn't a central. They're equating a central bank digital currency to just an easy payment method, right? So it's like when you tap your card on a payment portal, it's just like that, but it's fundamentally not just like that. It has a similar like process of interaction with the person that is using it to pay, but it is fundamentally a different thing they're using to pay with. Money, you can, so a euro, for example, you can take it to the bank and you can get cash. A central bank digital currency, you can't take it to the bank. You can't take it anywhere and get anything for it. You can only exchange goods and services for it. And because it is completely issued by whoever it is, the Fed tried Fed coin for a while. Americans are not having central bank digital currency. So EU people, I would encourage you to consider whether you want one or you want it or not.
I still have to push back against that. You never know in the US, because wasn't that the same, that the administrations will end up doing the opposite of what we want? And I'll give you just a quick example of what's going on right now with the attacks on the Houthis and the potential attacks on Iran and all that stuff. Trump was saying there will be we're going to be in peace and all that stuff. I will say the same about the financial aspect. I won't trust.
Oh, absolutely.
I will not trust the government.
Stay diligent on that. Okay, let's watch some stuff on this. And I'll show you guys if you want to see it, one of the propaganda videos, basically, or the teaching you about CBDC, the average European citizen. All right, let's share this. Let me add it to the stage. So we have Christine Lagarde, and we also have Ursula von der Leyen, who are both like really, really pushing this agenda. And we're going to dive into in a minute why they are potentially pushing this so freaking hard.
First, Europe needs a deep and liquid capital market. European household savings reach almost 1.4 trillion euros, compared with just over 800 billion in the United States. But European companies struggle to tap into that and raise the funding they need, because our domestic capital market is fragmented, and because that pushes money overseas. 300 billion euros of European family savings are invested abroad every year. That's a key issue holding back the growth of our tech startups and hindering our innovative clean tech sector. We do not lack capital. We lack an efficient capital market that turns savings into investments, particularly for early-stage technologies that have game-changing potential. And this is why we will create a European Savings and Investments Union.
And there it is.
With new European saving and investments products, new incentives for risk capital, and a new push to ensure the seamless flow of investment across our union. We will mobilize more capital to let made in Europe innovation and risk-taking thrive.
So that is part number one of this. So part number one of this is there are a couple of things that she said that are true. So fundamentally, Europeans are risk averse in terms of investment.
Mhm.
Whereas, so there's an article that I'd like to share. It is actually written by our lovely Christine Lagarde. Where are you? I don't know where it is. Anyway, but the point is that there are a couple of things that are true. So American households do invest more.
Mhm.
What the issue is that American families, so what they're saying is European families are poorer than American families because they do not invest their money. They keep their money. They tend to keep their money. I know.
You know why I'm laughing, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
And you're right. Here, go ahead while I find this.
Well, because they said they are poor because of what the policies that they have. They, meaning those in charge, the likes of the liar van der Leyen, has put Europe into. The citizens are not getting poorer because they just wanted to get poor. They getting poorer because they cannot afford the cost that is going. Look no further than what's going on in England right now. Even though they're saying there are those who say, well, 10,000 cut of jobs in the public sector is not much. Yeah, but it's still, ask an average citizen. And the idea, I remember I read an article by the monetary policy decisions, which is part of the European Central Bank. Here is what it says, and I quote, "The inflation has continued to develop broadly as staff expected, and the latest projections closely align with the previous inflation outlook. Staff now see headlines, inflation averaging 2.3% in 2025, 1.9% in 2026, and 2% in 2027. The upward revision in headline inflation for 2025 reflects stronger energy price dynamics. For inflation excluding energy and food, staff projects an average of 2.2% in 2025 and 2% in 2026 and 1.9% in 2027. End of quote.
Mhm.
You know, they are playing with number. They are manipulating how the outlook is. You look at now Germany being deindustrialized. So what that's going to do to inflation? Of course, it's going to jack it up.
Yeah.
The same thing we have right here, even though the administration is saying, well, the inflation is in control. No, it is not. So the argument has always been made about what the politicians are saying versus what the real prices are on the market.
Right.
So
for sure.
those politicians, they don't, Donald, even I don't speak for my country here. I don't care for Europe, but Donald Trump doesn't have a clue about the prices of when he
for sure.
Donald Trump doesn't go to grocery shopping.
No.
You know, what the heck would he know anyway?
I'm not sure he drives himself.
The guy
anywhere
is
either.
clueless. So when they say, and this is why we wanted to do this video for you guys,
Mhm.
we're not a financial advisors here, whatever. No. We're just providing you a basic understanding of where things are headed regarding the savings.
Mhm.
So this is why it makes more sense for you to really ensure that you have some cash on a side. Just as basic advice.
Absolutely.
Basic
I mean, yeah,
advice,
I don't
so.
think that's investment advice.
Yeah,
That's
no,
just like
no.
common
I'm just
common
saying,
sense advice.
for a rainy day, you
Well-
will be better off if you have a little bit of cash in your hand.
So I think the implications of this
Yeah.
are a lot bigger than, what somebody has or doesn't. The implications are basically that the government can take whatever they want out of your savings and do whatever they want with it. And it's certainly true that the United States, other countries are very much at risk for that too. This is not just the EU.
Yeah,
The EU is a testing ground basically for the rest of the Western world for
that's
this.
true.
So how, guys, please dictate how this goes for you, because how it goes for the Europeans is how it will end up going for the rest of the world. So I'd like to share this particularly. This is a speech by Christine Lagarde. And this was at the tail end of last year. So they've been actually trying to do this for a little while. There was a previous version of this that was actually last year. So I want to read a couple of different things. She's calling for a Kantian shift. I was like, oh man, that's
I
wild.
can't trust her.
Okay, so I would like to first start here. So Europeans have a high share of their income, around 13%, compared to around 8% in savings, but that Europeans favor low risk liquid savings products, which means they may not be making very much in terms of yield. It's a very, very small percentage in terms of yield yearly, but it's liquid. You can go to the bank and get your savings should you choose right?
Yeah.
So that's at the end of last year, it was approximately $11.5 trillion held in cash and deposits. Okay, now put a stake in that for a second, and I would like to head on over here to this lovely video. Where is it? Of who is it? Ursula von der Leyen talking about how we live in very dangerous times and they need to rearm Europe. With what money shall they rearm Europe? Let me share this with you guys instead. And let's rearm Europe.
Member states are ready to invest more in their own security if they have the fiscal space. More of this rearm Europe plan is to unleash the use of public funding in defense on the national level. Member states are ready to invest more in their own.
Where is that money coming from? You guys put the dots together, right? You see what she's referring to without saying it. That's basically where this concern about the savings are, especially for Europeans. Well, this is about the Europeans there. So I know some of you are like, hanging G, you're in England. So I'm sure you've been watching what's going on right there as far as what the government is planning to do. So this is going to be, and the concern for me personally is this is going to come to us down the road.
Absolutely.
Because it's always, that's how it works.
So that's a fundamental issue, especially for Americans, is that is, like I said, Europe is very often a testing ground for the rest of the Western world. And especially the United States, there's been a lot of pushback on a central bank digital currency. There have been a lot of governmental pushbacks, which is why Donald Trump is president right now. But I want to share this next piece of it because the way that it's being talked about is, oh, wow, look, we're going to have these amazing new investment opportunities. And the fact that Europeans historically have not had access to markets in the same way that Americans have had. Okay. Now she argues that it makes American families wealthier. And I will say our buying power is so declined that even if people financially have more, that doesn't mean they're wealthier. That's a very different definition of wealth.
Yeah.
But what she's talking about here, can I share this with you guys? This is a lovely article, should you decide to read it. It's very interesting. Okay, so she talks about what are they going to do with this money? So there's two parts to it. The first part is they're going to put it into venture capitalists or venture capital type funds. What she's talking about in these things. Okay, here it is. Oh, this was really funny. Let me see if I can find it. Basically, she's like, the issues with investment are that Europeans can't. Oh, here it is. As I see it, the core problem of CMU is the pipeline from savers to innovators is blocked by three key stages: entering, expanding, and exiting. There are no other stages than that. That's the whole process. The pipeline is blocked at every level. Yeah. Now, if you're a European, that's also a very interesting problem. So basically, there's no other safe place or very few other safe places in Europe to invest your money. So people are putting it in the bank in these very low yield savings accounts because every level of the pipeline of investment is blocked. Is there anything other than entering, expanding, and exiting?
Yeah.
No, that's the whole thing.
Well, this one goes back.
Nothing else.
Yeah, this one goes all the way back to the beginning of the euro. Mm-hmm. You know, how it's all came about. A lot of people do not know that it was the United States that convinced the Europeans to establish so-called the euro currency. I remember back in the day when I was, used to travel, whatever, I'll exchange currencies from when I go from France to Germany, I'll change the French franc to the German mark. And when I go to Dutch, I'll get the Gilda. When I go to Sweden, I'll get the Krona and so forth. So it was still, we pushed for that, but it was by design because we wanted to bring. I mean, I always made the arguments. For this euro thing.
Yeah.
How can you now have a country like, and no offense to Greece, I'm just giving an example, an EU member, you compare its currency to Germany.
Yeah.
So
it's
no
it's
offense to
ridiculous.
Greece.
No,
I'm just highlighting a point here.
Yeah.
Or even with the Italian lira, for that matter. You start to think in terms of why the Europeans were convinced to do that it will be good for them. Now, there was one country that was smart.
Yeah.
Didn't want to go along with it, even though it's a European member.
Yeah.
It's Poland.
Yes.
Poland decided not to do that because
would have crippled their economy.
Yeah, they were basically but it turns out to be the right good choice.
Absolutely.
Right decision.
The ability for countries to regulate their own currencies and regulate their own markets, I think, is really critical. The GDP of the different countries in Europe are so wildly different. I think that was a very questionable choice
for that.
For them. So let me read this to you because the next part is this, which is important. Fixing the demand side is key. There are too many barriers and bureaucratic hurdles for entrepreneurs in our single market, which means there are fewer high growth companies that VCs want to finance. So the companies that exist right now, there are few of them that VCs want to finance. Why would they not want to finance a company? Probably because they don't think they can make much money from it, or they think it's going to fail. The recommendations in the Letta and Draghi reports on completing the single market are critical for VCs to play a greater role. Okay, let's go right on over here to how risky a venture capitalist backed startup is. Okay, so this is from Private Equity List. While venture capital funding can greatly enhance a startup's chances of successes, approximately 25 to 30% of startups backed by venture capitalists fail. Representing 3 to 4 out of every 10 companies. This failure rate emphasizes the inherent risk and uncertainties associated with startups.
Wow.
Okay, wait. Oh, hold on. One more. There's one more really.
Well, it is problematic.
Considering fintech and technology startups have a failure rate with 70%, I think 70%, 75% of them failing within 2 decades of their inception. That's 75%.
Wow.
Failing within 2 decades of their inception. So when you look at what they're proposing investment, number one, in technology. And number 2, in VC-backed startups. Like, that's what she's talking about here. So to take your $10 trillion in savings that is nice and safe and cozy and put it into something that here in the United States has a wildly high failure rate, I think is questionable as a decision. And if the VCs don't want to fund it now,
that makes sense. That makes sense. Well, this is why you're starting to see where things are headed, economically speaking, in Europe. It has been on a roller coaster per se, with the inflation, with where things are price wise, and where the average person in Europe. When I say Europe, I'm also referring for us here in the US. Ask any average American for how things have been for the last 4 years.
No, so and even before that, stuff was not great before the last 4 years. But then you add the COVID years on top of everything,
that added more than now. Where I see it going differently now is with the development of the AI and the investments that's going to require. And guess who's taking the lead on that? Not us. Is the Chinese.
Well, China
moving. Well, actually, because the here's I found an article. As a matter of fact, guys, I'm gonna put the link for you in the description. You can read it. You can read it later on, should you choose to do so. And I'll elaborate on it. So I'm gonna put it in the chat box for you. Here we go. So here's the idea, and it was written by Li Yang Shan. So, and this one was recent. We're talking about March 19th.
Yeah.
So what I found very interesting about it. So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the idea of how, for example, when you think about the rally in the Chinese stock market.
Yeah.
The Wall Street didn't expect that, because it was all hypes about the performance of the U.S. stocks market.
Yeah.
Well, because one of the key driven forces for this has to do with the AI.
Sure.
The push for the AI, where they
Absolutely.
are going.
Absolutely.
So here's what it says, and I quote: "A rally in the Chinese stocks since the start of the year is prompting investors to predict that mainland shares will outperform their American peers, in a sign that attractive valuation are trumping the idea of the American exceptionalism." I mean, straightforward. Of course, you think about the SP 500 that slipped into correction territory for the first time since 2023. I remember this vividly because I did a video on it way back. I remember when I said it was the World Bank that was lying about the performance of the Chinese economy.
Yeah.
And the numbers proved.
Yeah.
And the World Bank went back and revised the assessment.
Love the revised numbers.
We are seeing the same here. When it says like since 23, in contrast, the MCI China index has gained 19% since the start of the year to March 9th this year.
Yeah.
According to, guess what? This is not according to the Chinese, according to Goldman Sachs.
Yeah.
Which means they are realizing and recognizing the performance of the economy.
Yeah.
And just to tie it to what you were saying earlier about the Europeans and the savings and support, it is because one of the area is the AI. There is a massive push.
Right.
Of course, Mr. Trump saying we're going to invest $500 billion. That just hypes.
Well, so the thing is, even if the United States does, so speaking to AI specifically, when DeepSeek came out as like a fraction of the cost of what it took to do ChatGPT, OpenAI, it changed the whole AI game. And not only was it super cheap to make, it's also open source. So even if the US government's like, no one can use DeepSeek, it's open source. So you can go make your own DeepSeek if you want to.
Yeah.
And so that opened AI to the world in a way I feel that AI should have always been. It should never have been this like stupidly expensive,
not what we
behind a paywall.
What we've been doing here in the
Absolutely.
US.
And the thing is, the US does that with everything. There's like the upcharge for everything. You are nickel and dimed here in the United States for every single thing. I remember when there was like an ad-free version of Amazon Video. So I really like watching Stargate. I'm a big fan of Stargate.
Yeah.
I know I got you into Stargate. But I love watching Stargate, especially like sometimes to just like relax and unwind, because it's a slower paced, older show. It's fantastic. Okay. But to get a Stargate, I have Amazon Prime. Okay. Like I'm already paying them for that service. Now I have to pay them monthly to not get ads on my Amazon Video that was once part of the package. So they took that out of the package, and now I have to pay an extra like $3 a month to not have ads on a service I'm already paying for.
Don't give them $3 a month.
Not watch ads, I would give them $3 a month, but it's like the nickel and diming to death of the American people. And it's really frustrating. It's the same with tax, right? Like you go to Europe, you go many other places, and the price that's listed is the price you are paying. Here, you have to do the math of like, okay, it's this price plus tax. And then what actually is it at the register? It's a different price.
Well, that's why the whole system, it's a mess, man. But just to go back to the point about the economy for for the Chinese vis-a-vis the investments in stocks and so
Yeah.
forth in the US. You know, here's the thing. And like I mentioned, and this article, that's why I liked this article when I read it by Lee. It was very poignant because, for example, she mentioned that in China, optimism around the country's artificial intelligence. It wasn't around some defense contractors or military hardware, whatever. It was the optimism around the country's artificial intelligence capabilities has intensified since the introduction of DeepSeek R1 model earlier this year.
Yeah.
And this is why you have now some CEOs here in the US, like, for example, Richard Harris. He's the CEO of Porter or Port Shelter Investment Management, stated, and I quote, "The US has had a good period, and that's coming to an end."
It's already ended.
Yeah.
What?
Because Trump's policies are very anti-economy. China has had a very bad period, but it looks like if it's starting to recover. End of quote.
So yeah, like definitely yes, but I don't. Right now is a weird snapshot in American economics. Okay.
Yeah.
Because we were headed down a bad path already. Okay. But then Trump slapped tariffs on tariffs on tariffs on tariffs.
Yeah.
Which are turning out to be real wild. Okay. It's turning out to have some very odd repercussions. But the reality also was that Trump could not, I mean, I guess he could keep kicking the can down the road in a whole bunch of ways for the United States economy, but either he did something very serious or the consequences would be very severe. So like I said, a bunch is coming out about, like the whole, the whole like signal fiasco and all that coming out. So, his administration's doing some stuff that not great. And, it's the same, like lying about, oh, tariffs are, they're a tax on another country. Don't you know, it's not here on the US. Okay. But he had to do something. So it's a weird point because you can't look at the United States and you can't look at like Wall Street right now because markets hate uncertainty. Yeah. And what do we have? Uncertainty out the freaking wazoo. And so, yes, I do understand his point, but it's like taking a really odd snapshot of the United States, our markets, and being like, well, they're on the way down. Well, dude, we were already on the way down. Like that's not like a rocket science kind of thing. You know what I mean? And I mean, China is up and down too. So I don't know. I think almost in a sense that's like a sensationalization, like, oh, look at how America sucks. Well, we're going through a really odd economic transition. Yeah. What we will look like at the end of this, I do not know, but I'm very curious.
Well, to piggyback on that particular point, so think about the consumer sentiments.
Yeah.
The consumer sentiments for which this year, as a matter of fact, there's an article here, guys. I'm going to share it with you, and this will be mainly for the American consumers, or American audience rather, but it's just worth at least understanding what's going on.
Oh, absolutely.
The basics. We are talking basics here. Stuff. So
here's the thing. Worse too.
The consumer sentiment took another hit in March as worries intensify over, you know what? Inflation. It's because it's coming.
Yeah.
It's coming because with the tariffs that's going to be, we're going to feel that soon. I mean, it's not going to happen overnight. But there are already indications over there. So over inflation and slumped stock markets. Stock markets will give you an idea.
Well, and we already, there's a bunch of sectors that are already starting to slow down. So, it's called the everything bubble. So, you know how we had the .com bubble and then we had the housing bubble in 2008. Now it's like the everything bubble because everything was overvalued.
Well, Ray Dalio made already. I think I read something he wrote about that. The economy in the US is going down. There is no if.
Right. Yeah. So Ray Dalio, and he like sends this point home every single time I like watch him speak, that the United States is in a declining cycle. And so of course it's on its way down because it's in decline. And what I think is trying to happen, I think that Trump is trying to prop it up. I think Trump is trying to even it out to whatever extent he can. I don't know whether he can do that or not. And I don't know that this is the right way to do it. But I do think that that is what he's trying to do. The governments around the world understand that the United States is in decline. Because the United States is in decline doesn't mean that it's going to disappear entirely as a global powerhouse.
No,
we
right
still have highest GDP in the world. Now, purchasing power parity, China's above us. And China is rising very quickly. But the United States is still the largest economy by GDP in the world. And so that doesn't mean the United States is going to go away suddenly. It doesn't mean that countries don't want us as a market. They obviously still do. It's just, it's not the only one anymore. It's not the only slice of the pie. It's not the only economy to go to and everybody else is poor. It's not. It's starting to even out some.
But I still see some signs.
Which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, but I see signs outside. For example, when if I drive and I see a sign, for example, for a house for sale.
Yeah.
And out of curiosity, I get the number and I'll call and find out the prices are ridiculously.
But that's the point. So housing sales are dropping, right? In not everywhere, but in a lot of the areas where they were especially really highly inflated, they're starting to drop back down.
But the property tax is not, or the evaluation of how much the house is worth is going up, which doesn't.
You got to contest that, guys. If that's happening to you, contest it.
I did it in my previous house. One time they told me that, and I took the papers and I went over to the office like, let's sit down and have a conversation. Well, what do you need, mister? And I said, well, first of all, you are praising my house far beyond what it's worth.
Yeah.
Because if you allow them to do this, we're going to end up paying the taxes on it. That is not even worth for that. And they said, well, we can reconfigure. And I said, it's not about reconfiguring. It's about doing it the right way, which means you're going to have to decrease this appraisal that is astronomical. You guys came up. My house is not worth that much money, given where I was living back then.
So there are a couple of things to that. The first is that, especially in Texas, what do those taxes fund? They fund like our school system. I mean, it's pretty gnarly. Okay. So, but they're taxing unrealized gains. So they're taxing your house as if you were going to sell it for that price. Okay. But you're not selling it, you're living in it. And so it's taxing unrealized gains, which is kind of a wild thing. But like Texas, for example, doesn't have income tax. So they're going to tax you one way or another. You might as well, whatever it is. But housing purchasing is declining substantially, and it's declining substantially because in between high interest rates and high prices, it's just not a great time to buy a house.
But it could be also a hint for what lies ahead, economically speaking.
Right, but that's what I'm trying to say is that economists have coined it the everything bubble, where we're in a bubble of everything, not just housing or not just .com or whatever, but we're in an everything bubble because everything is so inflated that it doesn't have a choice but to come down and crash.
What I find interesting is that Mr. Trump is not tackling this particular issue. Mr. Trump is tackling, I don't, I criticize Trump when criticism is warranted. Simple as that. And I don't care if he's listening or whatever. So I'll tell him to his face. You give credit where credit is due. Yeah, to me, that's how it is. But if you are to say you want to help the country, well, first of all, let's in your house, you budget your things. Are you going to live beyond your means if you don't have enough resources for it? The answer is no, unless you want to sink yourself into more debt. That is not reasonable to begin with. So to me, the argument will be like for the U.S. economy, if we are to start with this thinking about fixing it, then let's start with Department of Defense first budget. You are the president, you have the means. Let's first figure out why do we have over $1 trillion in a budget.
Sure.
So let's start with that and cut that down by half, because even if you cut it by half, no other country will get closer to what we spend. And why do we need to spend that much to begin with?
Well, I think it's partially because right now our defense is so built up. I mean, we have the large defense contractors are large. I mean,
Is they controlling
this
the,
is
and it
not
tells you
nothing,
who
okay?
controls the policies
They're
there, right there.
They're
there.
large. And why do you think we have wars all the time?
Well,
Because
we are
what
about-
needs weapons,
We
right?
are about to embark on one.
I really don't want
Let's hope.
to.
Yeah, that will be a
Fingers
mistake.
crossed, knock on wood.
I can
we
say
don't.
this. I can say this based on my experience.
Yes.
It will be a big mistake to target Iran.
Yes.
I say it flat out. It will be
Please
a
don't do it.
big mistake.
Please, government, don't do it.
Yeah, Iran is
Please
not
don't.
other countries,
Mhm.
so it would be.
No,
a
they're
big mistake.
freaking wild. I would not, I would not pick that.
Let alone what they have.
Yeah.
So
Well,
this is not about the high-end aircraft carriers and all that.
No,
All
yeah.
that stuff becomes a target anyway, sitting duck. What
yeah,
they have is the nature of the type of missiles they have.
yeah.
And not just any type of missiles, is the precision.
Yes.
So that's to me where the concern. So if to go back to our original topic,
yeah.
if Mr. Trump are really thinking about fixing the economy for the U.S., let's start with that first. Cut down on that. But Trump is not going to do that because
he also
Trump
can't. I don't believe he can.
Trump is forced to go certain directions,
Mhm.
especially now. What's going on in that part of the world? If you tie it to the economy here in the U.S., you know, this is why we are doing whatever we are doing to serve another country for that reason.
Yeah.
You have to read between the lines, guys. You have to read between the lines.
Well,
Nothing happened in the vacuums.
so speak now on that topic.
Oh,
on
Army
that-
with Harmony send it.
Oh,
thank you, Army
hey.
with Harmony.
Thank you.
Just stop Yemen so we can rebuild the temple. Yeah, that's why I meant that. Yeah. Thank you, Army with Harmony.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, let me share this video because if you have any question as to who runs our country,
Yes.
let me share this with you. It's been making the rounds on the internet because it is so wild. All right, let me add this to stage. Okay, so this is Elon Musk right here in the Oval. This was recent.
Yeah.
This is Elon Musk here in the Oval Office with his son and and Donald Trump here sitting down. So I'll play
Wait.
this for a second for
Yeah.
you guys. It's not
Well,
really,
you're certified behaviorist. You
Yes.
understand this.
So
You're gonna have to explain some
let's
stuff about that.
watch this and see if, because some of you guys have been with us for a while. What do you see in this body language? Perhaps the dress of the people who are involved. What do you guys see here in terms of power play? You don't have to listen to the words if you don't want to. This is really about the visual cues of this whole scenario.
For example, about Treasury, just making sure that payments that go out, taxpayer money that goes out, is categorized correctly, that the payment is explained.
Contracts when it comes to the Pentagon, for instance, which the president I know has directed you to look into.
Yeah.
Are you policing yourself in that?
Who
Is
is
there any
standing
sort of accountability
It's
check and balance in place
What?
that would
It doesn't
provide
matter
Oh,
what
I
they're
see.
saying.
transparency for the American people?
Well,
I just
all of
wanted
our
you
actions
guys
are
to see here. I'll actually mute it while
yeah,
we do
because
this.
they won't be able to hear.
No, they can hear it. But it doesn't matter what he's saying. It matters that he's standing up and Donald Trump is sitting down. It matters that he's wearing a t-shirt instead of a suit.
Yeah.
He owns suits. His son is wearing a suit. He has his child here in the Oval Office. He is out of the two.
Baseball cap.
He's standing up while the president of the United States is sitting down, physically lower than him. Who in this situation is the person of power?
Yeah.
It's Elon Musk.
Yeah.
And if you notice, it's an interesting phenomena because the billionaires of the world, you know, what did Mark Zuckerberg and Steve Jobs get popular for wearing?
T-shirts.
T-shirts.
Whatever.
Steve Jobs had his like black turtleneck and jeans or whatever that he wore all the time. You know, that's a power play. Elon Musk is so wealthy, he's owned by no one. Not even the president of the United States. Wow, that spray tan it gets me every time. That is so orange. Jeez, guys, wow. Man, cameras don't do it any justice either, but man, that's real orange. But if you look at the power in this situation, and even look at homeboy over here. He's also in a suit. He is also clearly owned by somebody. He has to wear that suit to come into work every day.
Well, actually, the protocol, just to my knowledge, the protocol for White House is a suit and tie.
Okay, well, who is in the White House right now?
To my knowledge, my time when I was there, protocol is suit and tie. Not just
but who's not wearing one? The billionaire isn't wearing one. The person who isn't owned by anyone isn't wearing one.
Yeah.
It shows you who really has the power in the world, because Donald Trump can't kick him out. He can't kick him out for not wearing a suit and tie. I don't know that he would anyway, but he can't. He can't kick this billionaire who is now going through, and like I said, I actually really like what Doge is doing, but he's a billionaire that's literally going through all of our governmental organizations and looking at the most sensitive data in our country. He is unelected. That is a fact.
Yeah, which is,
He is unelected. He is just a tech billionaire. That's all he is. And like I said, I just want to make this clear. I do like what Doge is doing. I think it's fantastic. But if you're looking at, like you literally brought up, who is in charge of our country? And right now, the guy with a hat and no suit in the Oval Office that's standing next to a sitting president is who's in charge.
Yeah.
You can take a lot of cue. Who brought his kid? I mean, his kid is sitting on the floor in the Oval Office. Where are Donald Trump's kids? Are his grandkids there? Is anybody else's kid there?
And why would you even bring a kid into?
That's a fantastic question.
It's reality of it.
Why would he bring his kid?
It's less like he can't afford a nanny.
No, he's doing it. It's not like he can't afford a suit either.
Yeah.
He's doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
Right? And if you look at body language, whereas people's words can lie, your body language doesn't lie.
Yeah.
Your body language tells the truth. The power play here is look, Donald Trump is looking up at him. Donald Trump could have stood up to be on his level, but he didn't. Why is that? So anyway,
what do you guys think? What do you guys think?
I just want to share that with you guys because it is.
Well, it's disturbing to begin with.
It's obvious, is what it is.
Yeah, it's well, it gives you an idea now about how it's always been, how the system here has always been. I mean, you go all the way back to after World War II.
Yeah. When
the warning were given about
central bankers,
the MIC, you're gonna have to, like I always remind the community that the decisions for the conflicts was made in the early 50s, 1952 or 53, one of those years, when a specific meeting was taking place. That's when those decisions were made. So then you go throughout history and you see from the Korean War, Vietnam, Gulf I, Gulf II, Afghanistan, Ukraine, and soon to be South China Sea. Because as you know.
I know, I really don't want it to happen though.
Well, you know
what, guys? If we can stop some stupid war stuff from happening, let's do it.
Well, you have to have.
Let's do it.
Yeah, to do that, you have to have. When we're speaking for people here in the U.S., you have to have people understand the basics.
Yeah.
You go back to the finance aspect.
Oh, absolutely.
How many here in the U.S. understand the basics of finance? Just the basic, the value of how you manage money. It's because they are not going to teach that at the universities.
No.
I remember when I was teaching at the college level. Sometimes I'll stray away a little bit, and to the point that the administration later on, once they start to hear my name on the campus, because it was my first semester, and everybody was like, "Go take this guy."
Yeah,
next
that's
semester, whatever.
cool.
They
Cool.
didn't like that because you weren't teaching from a book. You're
Mhm.
trying to help them understand. When I do fiscal policies,
Yeah.
it came up a part of the Congress and all that stuff. I'll stray away a little bit into
Yeah.
talk about basic
Well,
finance, and I found out that they don't know much.
they don't, and honestly, the people we've elected to Congress don't either. It's actually
Yeah.
it's actually an interesting thing. You know, you think
Yeah.
you think you've elected somebody who really understands
Yeah.
finances, how the government works, and all that. But if that were true, we wouldn't have the debt that we have. We wouldn't have the national debt. And I think that that's an interesting thing because, you know, Congress is the one who approves the budget.
Well, it has a name that is called the power of the purse.
Yes,
If you
the
ever
power of
heard
the
that
purse.
term, that's
Absolutely.
reference to Congress because they control the money. But the idea of our tax dollars, we have the right constitutionally. This is what, again, most Americans do not
Yeah.
know. It is, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in the Fourth Amendment,
Yeah.
Fourth Amendment, that the citizens can and have the right to hold the government accountable regarding the spending.
Yeah.
We do. Mind you, that taxes have never been mentioned in the Constitution. Let me just remind
Yeah.
you. Technically, we're not obligated to pay taxes.
Yeah, but try not paying them.
Yeah. Well,
I mean-
it was somebody who challenged the status quo,
Yeah.
end up in court and all that stuff, but
Yeah.
challenged them. He really challenged them
I mean,
all the way.
challenge them through the
Yeah.
right channels.
He told them, show me in the
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Constitution where it
Yeah.
says we are obligated. At that
Mhm.
time, it was the difference between District of Columbia versus the
Yeah,
rest of the
yeah.
colonies and so forth. But really, when you take a step back, and think about it, is there any clause in the Constitution that specifically said citizens
believe
of the
so, yeah.
United States must pay taxes? That's like for example, the provisions regarding privacy.
Mhm.
It stated word for word that the government shall not infringe on people's rights and privacy. So it spells out the words. There was nothing there regarding the taxes.
Yeah.
I mean, let alone the taxes are being wasted.
Yeah.
I will have no problem if you pay taxes that they are being used that will benefit everybody.
Right. And that's fundamentally the point. And actually, so is interesting. We my husband and I watched a movie on the Apollo 11 program,
Mhm.
and it was fun. They were playing like old clips or whatever, and there were a bunch of people being like, well, why are our tax dollars being used to send people to the moon? Like, why are their tax dollars being sent to send people into space? And that's like a legitimate question. And even back then in the freaking 60s, when they were
Yeah.
doing this, people were like, stuff is bad down here, guys. Can you fix here instead of trying to go to space?
Mhm.
And the 60s.
Well, here is one.
5 years ago.
Yeah, here is
60
one
years
thing:
ago.
the reality of it, which I'm sure you know by now, that this whole reality of the space race was geopolitically motivated.
Oh, absolutely.
It's because of geopolitical.
And I flat out believe it was faked. Like, unquestionably believe it's faked. And if you guys want a really great video on it, there's a show called The Y-Files. I'm a big fan of The Y-Files, but The Y-Files, why the moon landing is faked.
Yeah.
Go check it
Yeah,
out.
Francis Tango, you'll like this stuff.
Francis
Go watch
Tango,
it.
go check
Yeah.
out The Y-Files.
Yeah.
He's got like a weird talking fish, but it's
I
like a
saw
comedy.
it. I watched it. Yeah.
I really hated that, like the playback with this talking fish, and now I really like it. So I
Makes
just
more sense, right?
just like sit with the talking fish,
Yeah.
get past it, because the moon landing episode is fantastic of the Y-Files.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's much a bigger picture, guys, to understand. And this is what I'm saying. I said earlier, I'll criticize Trump when criticism is warranted, or you give credit where credit is due. For example, when he decided now to abolish the Department of Education.
Yeah.
I see the rationale for something like this. Why?
Yeah.
Give it to the states and let the states decide, But because the states were at the mercy of the federal government because of funding of the education. Here in our state, the governor a few years ago took about $4 billion out of the education department.
Yeah.
Even our governor ain't a good
Well,
one to begin with.
No.
Abbott is kind of like, sitting at World Economic Forum stuff, whatever. But it won't matter.
Yeah. Well, if you notice this like Ursula von der Leyen stuff, all that's got like World
Big
Economic
World
Forum in the
Economic Forum,
background. It's 2025 Davos. And you're like, man, can you like bring up something not evil at Davos?
Yeah.
Like taking EU citizens' savings and investing it into either
that,
like your rearm Europe or EU,
Ukraine.
or rearm Ukraine, or
Which they
like
can't anyway.
putting it in risky venture capital. Jesus.
What about even our own tax dollars? That's going to the World Economic Forum. $52 million that was given to
take that back
from U.S.
I think the U.S. does not want to be part of the World Economic Forum anymore, guys.
Well, we shouldn't to begin with. We got our own problems to deal with here. So my point in all this is the idea that till you have people,
it's real dark in here. Sorry,
because
it's storming outside, guys. So sorry, I got it's like really dark.
It's because the idea of the until people become informed in understanding the basics, finance one of them. This is why we wanted to address this one here for you, just to highlight to you the idea of, you might have savings in the banks, but also you might have to think of plan B to make sure you either put cash aside or figure something. Don't count on that, because you remember what happened in Greece, remember?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And in Beirut,
all of that
Lebanon,
was out
when people were going to the banks to withdraw money, and there was no money there, because that's exactly what could happen here in the US if the government would said, just you for the bank, use whatever. This is why you have the major banks, and I'm talking about the major ones, controlling the process. And how they controlling it? By also eliminating small banks, mom and pop's banks. I'd rather have the small ones because those are in the community. They know everybody. They're only the big ones are controlling the process. And we have about 5 here in the US that controlling the process completely. Completely. This is why you have to understand the intricacies of how finance works, how money works, and so forth. Gives you an idea of at least what you need to be looking for moving forward. So
absolutely. No, this whole thing is actually really, it's very frustrating. It's very scary. Back in I saw Sen Tang. I just like hopped on the chat for a second, and he said silver coins. So like gold and silver is sort of a hedge against something like this happening. And so absolutely, that is a hedge that a lot of people are talking about. I'm obviously not an investment. This is not investment advice.
Not our area.
I'm not an investment person. But
but you learned something over the years. So we all do.
But they made having gold illegal here in the United States. People had to, I forgot what year it was, but they had everybody turn in their gold coins, all of the gold that they owned. And the US government paid them market price, which at the time I think was like $32 or something. And then once all of the gold had been purchased from the American people, and you could not keep it. It was not a like voluntarily handing over your gold, right? You could not keep it, but you were paid fair market value for it. Immediately after that, gold was revalued and revalued at a higher cost now that all the central banks had the gold. And so it's even that I hope to God something like that doesn't happen again. I think at least in the United States, you would have,
by the way, Vishnu.
I'm
teasing you.
I am very deeply spiritual. I believe in a God, and I believe that there's value to all religions.
I know what you mean.
That is very.
I'm
very
just joking, guys.
I know.
To those who knows the world of religion, you know what I'm talking about, Vishnu.
Yes, this is like a secret passion that you guys don't know about me. But I love studying world spirituality. I love it. I love studying world spirituality. I have gotten my hands on every single ancient spiritual text that I can, because I think existence is so fascinating.
Yeah, it is indeed.
So anyway, that's just like a secret. That's like a secret about me.
Let me say thank you here to Army with Harmony, who gifted a membership. And guess who gifted it to? To draw
that's
is war.
cool.
Thank
Cool.
you, Harmony, for the
Very
membership.
cool.
Yeah, Army with Harmony. Thank you so much for
Yes,
doing
you're
that.
fantastic. We really
it.
appreciate you.
Appreciate you for that.
But yeah, so maybe that's a good hedge, maybe not. I don't know, but a
So,
lot of people in both gold and silver are just freaking through the roof. It's wild.
Anyway,
wild.
that's the. Well, anyway, guys, we wanted to just share this with you to let you know what's going on, what lies ahead, because especially for here in the US, for Europe, they're moving forward with this. So for our viewers in Europe, keep your eyes open.
Or stop it, viewers in Europe, man. Be like, hey, we're not really interested in risky investments. We're not really interested in your venture capital stuff. You know,
and same thing here in the US. For we are coming, it's gonna be happening here. So it's very concerning now how certain policies are being now approached, even with the current administration. I just found out this morning that a student, she's a PhD candidate, student, has been arrested.
For what?
For standing up and supporting supporting the groups in. She's against the war in Gaza. They arrested her for that.
Yeah.
Why?
No.
No. To me, this is disturbing.
Why?
The fact that Donald Trump saying that's one piece and all that, all of a sudden doing this. So we're not gonna get into that topic. I just wanted to highlight to you where things are headed regarding this financial aspect moving forward. So if you are in the US, keep your eyes open because it will be coming here. And like what Elizabeth said earlier, Europe is usually a testing ground for certain things. This is why we forced them into the euro. Euro didn't come from within Europe. We the one who pushed the idea for it. Just want you to know, guys.
And I will say that this is the last thing that I will say, and it's the only thing that I will say. Neither candidate ran on stopping that conflict.
They won't. There is a reason.
Saying?
Yeah, there is a reason for all this.
Neither candidate wanted that to end.
As a matter of fact, tomorrow I'm gonna do a live stream on the other channel on the geopolitical trends, and I'm gonna talk to you about one specific thing that nobody's talking about. You know what it is? Why all of a sudden Syria is quiet? You don't hear it. Think about it. Why all of a sudden nobody's talking about Giuliani, the terrorist who was now became the interim president? Why all of a sudden Europe is giving money to that government? And why all of a sudden Israel is bombing al-Ladiqiyah? What was in al-Ladiqiyah? It was the Russian base that still exists to a degree.
And I want to ask you guys one question, and that is, if we were to have investment people who specialized in different kinds of investment on, like, I want someone to come on and talk about like the Bitcoin reserve the US is doing, maybe somebody in gold and silver. I want to bring resources to you guys to help you build, also not just talk about how scary the economy is, because the economy is globally is challenging, but you can always be successful no matter how bad things get. You can always find a way to protect yourself and your family and be successful. So I'm interested in topics that you guys would be interested in hearing about that are like more investment based, and then who you might be interested in. And I'll afterwards, if I can remember, I'm going to put that in the community tab and do like a poll. And if you guys can please comment on it, because I'm pulling together guests, but I'd really like to hear what you're interested in so that I can find guests that are in that vein. So let me know what you guys want in the community tab. It'll be like a question or a poll.
Great. All right, guys. Once again, just to remind you, join me for Geopolitical Trends on when?
Tomorrow?
No, no. The ones tomorrow has been postponed till the following day.
Okay. So Saturday.
That's with Carl Za. But on Saturday, I will be at 12 noon with Dr. Stewart. He's going to be joining me. So you guys prepare your questions, the health questions, if you have any. It was kind enough of him to allocate time for the community. And he said, yeah, I'll be happy to do it. And on same day, Saturday, at 7:30 p.m. with Kalza. And on Sunday at 8:30 a.m. with Professor Anna Malandag, we will be talking about Philippines foreign policy. So I hope
All
you guys
right.
enjoy this, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.